In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to plan out an entire year of writing in just 10 to 15 minutes in what I call a writer's roadmap. If you're new here, my name is Aaron. I am a 3 times self-published author, and on this channel, I'm going to be talking about the writing process and also documenting my journey towards becoming a traditionally published author. Real quick, what is a writer's roadmap? For me, it consists of 3 distinct parts. One is setting a large, achievable yet difficult goal. 2, establishing a writing habit. And 3, making sure you have a way to track your progress and adapt or pivot as needed if your situation changes. Step 1 in creating your writer's roadmap for the upcoming year is to set your goal. Ideally, this should be a pretty big goal, something that is going to push the limits of what you think you're capable of, something that if you didn't actually put in effort would not be achievable. So for me, my big goal is to send a highly published manuscript out to some agents. I'll add a little smiley face on there just because. Now, the most important thing when you're setting your goal is to make sure that it is something within your control, because you can largely not determine whether you're going to be a New York Times bestselling author. And even though that's something we all would just love to have happen, it is largely outside of your control. But what you can do and what is within your control is to say, I'm going to spend an hour every day polishing my manuscript. I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day during my lunch break to work on character dialogue, anything like that. Focus on goals that involve the process and not necessarily the outcome. Once you've decided on a goal, the next thing you need to do is break it down into multiple steps. Because when you have a huge goal, such as finish a novel or write a web series or whatever it is, write 10 short stories this year, it can be incredibly overwhelming, and then you're just going to feel a bit defeated, which can make sure that you never finish your project. So break it down into 3 or 4 chunks, ideally. So for me, here's what that's going to look like. Let's erase this real quick. Now, this can include writing, researching, editing, revising, sending it out to people. But for me, it is going to involve finishing the second draft, which I'm currently doing right now. It is going to have me sending it to beta readers. I'm going to write a query letter. Write a query letter / research agents. Then I'll be revising based on what people tell me, the feedback I get from beta readers. After that, I will be sending out a highly polished manuscript. Once you have your idea broken down into a couple of these larger steps, what you need to do is look at a calendar, write out the 12 different months, and I'm going to do this in a second, and plot each one of these along sections in a reasonable time that you think you could accomplish them. And then we're going to break it down further into weeks, into days, on how much you need to be doing based on what your goal is. Way over here, we have January, and over here, we have December of 2026, but really this can be for whatever year you're doing it in. So here's the year, and think about the goals, the broken down goals that you just wrote. So here, January, what is halfway through the year? June, December. So I figure My second draft is roughly 100,000 words, and I'm going to give myself the next couple months to work on it. So, January, January to April, I'm going to finish draft 2. After that, I send it to beta readers, but that's really just more an internal step. It's not something I need to take too much action on, so I'm not going to plot out a specific time for that. January to April, do that. And then I'm going to give the beta readers 2 months to read it to give me feedback. I feel like that's a reasonable amount of time, but truly, I have no idea because I'm in this journey. You're seeing me go through it live, so if it's wrong, I'll update you later. May to June, I plan on. What am I doing in May to June? That's right. I am writing the query letter. June, July to August. We'll say revise. And this one is pretty up in the air because I have no idea what sort of feedback I'm going to be getting from beta readers, whether I have a ton of changes, whether I have very minor changes. So the second half of the year could really change quite a bit, but we can always pivot later. We can always change. For now, we're going to set a plan and we're going to stick to it as much as we can. So these 2 months, I will be revising, and then in September to December, I will send to agents. Now, we have figured it out month by month, roughly what we're going to do. Now let's break it down even further, even more. So January to April, that is 4 months, roughly 120 days to write. You can't see it. To write 100,000 words of this draft. Obviously, I already have a first draft, but I know what changes I'm going to be doing. So hopefully it shouldn't be too bad, but I'm giving myself extra time just in case. Roughly, this works out to a little under 850 words a day, which for some people might not sound like a lot. For me, it is certainly doable, but it is going to be pushing myself because I still have a full-time job. I have a family. I try to stay active, blah, 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 blah. So with this 850 words a day, by the end of April, I will have completed my second draft and then can move on to the next step. For May and June, as I'm writing a query letter and researching agents, that is not really a word count goal. So a query letter is generally 250 to 300 words. So if I write 800 words a day, that's just silly. That's not going to do me any good. So instead, what I can track is how many minutes I spend per day or per week working on my query letter and researching agents. So let's just say I commit to 45 minutes a day of writing query letters, researching how to write query letters, improving, writing different drafts of them, and also researching agents. You can use, Query Tracker, I think Manuscript Wishlist. I don't know if that's a website, but they have that on there. Anyway, Query Tracker is the main one as far as my research has led me to believe. So I can spend 45 minutes a day either writing the letter or finding agents who are, 1, open to submission, and who are, 2, have a manuscript wish list that is aligned with how I would classify my novel. So I would call it a dark fantasy, a dark urban contemporary fantasy. So I'll find someone along those lines. I'll make an Excel chart of their information, what's on their manuscript wish list, emails, etc., etc. Average response time for queries. There's somewhere on there where other people say, oh, this agent took this long to get back to me. This agent took this long to get back to me. So I'm also going to put that into my Excel spreadsheet. Anyway, that is going to take me to the end of June, which gets me, hopefully, to July, where I will have feedback from beta readers. And again, I have no idea how much how many changes I'll have to make at this point. So I can't dedicate necessarily a word count limit per day or per week until I know what sort of feedback I need to make. I know, change this scene, do this, blah, blah, blah. But I can also commit to a time goal. And the things I'm committing to, as you can hopefully see, is they're all very, very trackable, because one of the most important things for making progress, I believe, is, pardon me, being able to track your goals and see if you're actually making progress or if you are just full of shenanigans. So, again, in July and August, I don't know what I'll say. I don't know what I'll need to make changes to, rather. But I can commit to 45 minutes a day making revisions. Again, very, very doable, but not if you let it slip. Not if you spend too much time playing video games, watching Netflix, scrolling on Instagram, whatever. It's just carve out this chunk of time, this 45 minutes, put it towards this goal. Next up, September through potentially the rest of the year, hopefully sooner, but I know querying agents can be a very long process. So, sending out to agents, again, this is not necessarily a time goal, and this isn't really a word count goal. So, what I've decided to do is send out 5 queries every other week. And again, it's super trackable. It's something I can say, yes, I did it, or no, I did not do it. And the reason I'm doing it in 5s is because you want to send them in batches. So instead of sending out 50 letters, not hearing anything back, then it's done. Once you query an agent with a project, you can't send them that project again. So send it to a couple, ideally a couple who provide really quick feedback. And if you don't get any full requests for your manuscript, then you can say, okay, something about my query letter isn't working. But if you do, then okay, make a tweak here, make a tweak there. But send them in batches. So 1 week, send out 5. The next week, it gives you time to make changes, to revise. Next week, send out 5. Next week, make changes, revise, blah, blah, blah. And this isn't a perfect system because it can take some agents 4, 6, 12 weeks to hear back from you, or they might be the type of agent where if you don't hear back from them, then just assume it's a rejection. But I don't know. Hopefully I hear back from someone, because I think I have a pretty great story. Anyway, so that is my plan. That'll get me from September to December. That is what? September, October, November, December. So 4 months. So 10, 20, 30, 40. So by the end of the year, I will have sent out, if I stick to my roadmap, I will have sent out 40 query letters, which is a decent amount. There could be more, it could be less, but that's a pretty great goal, and that's something that I think is very achievable if I get my nose to the grindstone. Now, on to step 2. Step 2 in your writing roadmap for the year is, if you haven't already, to establish a writing habit. Now, this is easier said than done, and there's really no great tricks. There's no supreme secrets or anything for it. Ultimately, it does just come down to having self-discipline and doing the things you say you're going to do. Because if you don't have the discipline to sit down when you say you're going to sit down and write, there's no way you're going to reach your goals, at least not in the time period that you set. So while I don't have any secret sauce, I don't have any crazy tips for you, I do have just a few random thoughts on establishing habits and how to keep that momentum going. So truly one of the biggest things is, I believe, especially as a writer, is that words have power. And the words that you tell to yourself have a huge influence over your mind, over your actions. So instead of telling yourself, if you're not going to be writing, instead of telling yourself, oh, I don't have time, because that's not true, what you need to be saying instead is, I'm choosing not to write because writing is not a priority for me at this time. And when you start saying stuff like that, you realize it is more within your control. And hopefully, you telling yourself and hearing that writing is not a priority might piss you off just a little bit and motivate you to write because you want writing to be a priority. But truly, how you spend your time shows what your priorities are. So be very careful with the words that you tell to yourself because words have power. One of the only other really tricks I know of, I believe this is from James Clear, Atomic Habits. If you haven't read that, give it a read or listen to one of the summaries. But it is called habit stacking or linking or chaining. I'm going to go with chaining. Chaining. Because if you have one habit that you already do, it is much, much easier to add another habit onto that, either before or afterwards. This is a bad example, but if you already have the habit of brushing your teeth, then it's much easier to also add the habit of flossing onto that. So take something you already do. Perhaps you watch Netflix for an hour before bed every night. You are in the habit of doing that. Your brain makes the decision for you because it's the easiest path, the path of least resistance. So instead of doing that, or in addition to doing that, truly, is sit down and write or work towards your goal for 15 minutes, and then you can still do your habit, or watch one episode of something and then do it after. Just combine these habits, filling in, slowly adding good habits and slowly removing bad habits. And hopefully, before you know it, you will have established a really consistent writing habit. I'm not saying you have to write every single day. I think it's probably better if you do, but plenty of very successful writers don't. I don't, even though I would love to. It's something I'm working towards. And again, it just comes down to self discipline. The final step in your yearly roadmap, step 3, is to track your progress, which is why it was super important when you're breaking down your goals in the very first step to focus on the process and focus on actions that you can take and not necessarily on the outcome, because otherwise it would look like day 1, am I a New York Times bestselling author? No. Day 2, am I Kitty's going crazy. Day 2, am I a New York Times bestselling author? No. Day 3, am I, etc., etc., etc. You get it. Useless to track that. Instead, day 1, did I write 500 words? Yes. Day 2, did I write 500 words? No. Day 3, did I write 500 words? Yes. So then you have information and you can see how well you're doing, which for me is a huge motivator. If I know, okay, this was a really tough week, I barely hit any of my word count, then I know, all right, next week I'm really going to dial in. I'm really going to double down and get extra words so I can still hit my goal by the time allotted. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can do it on paper. I think the easiest way is just to do an Excel spreadsheet. So in one column, you have the date. Oop, that's not a D. The day. In another column, you have the variable that you're tracking. This could be words. This could be time spent. For me, in the second half of the year, this could be how many query letters I sent out. And again, this one, if you need to do a little bit of math, you could say, all right, this is the starting word count. This is the finishing word count for the day. And then you do final column to just automatically do the subtraction for you. Then you compare, you can code it super fancy and do colors and borders and blah, blah, blah if you want to say, was this word count for the day or the time for the day? Was this above my target, below my target, or at my target, whatever. You can see visually very quickly the progress you're making and how well you're doing for each day. Now, next up, let me get this eraser. I think it is incredibly helpful to also do a weekly review. So I'm going to put this up here real quick. Weekly review, where it's just every 7 days you look back at your progress. You look back, did I hit my target day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7? Did I hit my target those days? And you can kind of give yourself a grade or like a percentage completed for each of those. How many days out of 7 did you do it? And again, for me, I find this very helpful to know if I was slacking, then in the future it'll motivate me because I know I can do better. I know I can do better. So just reflecting and taking a minute to reflect is huge when it comes to tracking your progress. And if you are finding consistently that you are unable to hit your goals, you might need to adapt. You may need to revise your plan because maybe you were overly ambitious. It's good to have a big goal and to be ambitious, but if you set the target way, way, way too high and realistically you just do not have the time, you cannot commit the time to that each week, then you're failing and you're failing and you're failing. And then you're going to start to get depressed. And then you're not going to want to work on your writing project anymore, which is the opposite goal of what this writing roadmap is supposed to do for you. So you can adapt, you can pivot, you can lower your goal. You might still make it. It'll just take you more time potentially. But back to the weekly review. One important thing that I also like to do with this is, and I believe I got this from the Mindset Mentor podcast, is a start, stop, continue. You can kind of think of it like a traffic light, but maybe it's not the best analogy. So reflecting back on the progress that you made for that week, what is one thing that you need to start doing in the next week to continue making progress or to make more progress? What is one thing that, and I realize these words do not line up with where the traffic light says they should be, not important. What is one thing that you need to stop doing this week? So, I spent too much time playing video games this week. I need to stop playing video games for more than an hour a day, which I don't know, whatever. One thing to stop doing in order to better hit your goals, in order to better hit your writing targets. Because again, this is a long-term goal. Writing a book is a huge, huge undertaking, and you need to stay consistent because as much as you could write for 20 days straight, 3,000 words a day, okay, that's great. It's much more realistic to write a certain amount of days. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, the final thing in this weekly review, as I said, was continue. So pick one thing that you need to continue, one thing you did well with this week. So you could say, I did really well at spending my lunch break, 15 minutes of my lunch break at work, writing or editing or researching agents, whatever it is, something that you should continue doing because it is important to pat yourself on the back a little bit once in a while. You don't need to blow smoke up your own hoo-ha, but it is important since it's such a long, drudging, long, hard process to say, you know what? I did do something good this week, and I'm proud of myself for taking that action, for being consistent in just that one little small step. What do they say? Move the needle every day. Just move the needle a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer to your goal, and eventually you'll be there. If nobody has told you recently, I believe in you. I think you've got this. And if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment with your writing roadmap for the upcoming year.